and welcome to FFS Fast Finance Sorted, your fun 15-minute financial education. I'm Hilary Lewis from Winchester Corporate Finance.
And I'm Martin McLeod from Financial Health Club.
And I'm Beth Jackson from Two Sisters Accounting. And today we are sponsored by Reward Finance Group.
So I actually read earlier this week that there's a Standard Life study that shows that only 22% of financial advisors consider financial well-being as part of their business model. It's mental, isn't it? Literally, da-da.
Yeah, and having worked in financial advice, it's not surprising because I think the focus has always been primarily on the sales aspect and the product selling and making sure that people get a certain level of return. There's not a core aspect of the industry that's given to really speaking about what people truly value and having great long conversations about who these people are, what it is that they're really trying to achieve. In my experience of working for big companies in financial advice, it was like you've got an hour with this client and then you move on an hour with the next client. You had 15 minutes to quickly read or even less about who that client was, and then you're into a meeting. You can't possibly get to know who people are and what it is that they're truly trying to achieve. And that's one of the reasons that I became a financial coach and left the financial advice industry, because I thought I can really help people get to know who they are, what they value, and educate them on what will effectively bring them larger amounts of financial gain over their future than simply somebody saying, this is the product for you and sign this is what you pay me, this is what you're going to pay me every year for the rest of your life. It's not rocket science, but a lot more has to be done. It doesn't surprise me the figure is 22%. I mean, you think that financial advisors have actually answered that questionnaire, and obviously 78% are quite openly admitting that they don't value the client's financial well-being, which is quite arrogant in a sense as well. But it just shows you that the industry is built upon the actual selling of the product. It's built on the wealth of the client, and me as a financial coach, I don't care how much money somebody's had or how much they've got. I just care that they can have more. It doesn't matter if they've got £5 or £500 or £5,000. Whereas in financial advice, it's all about the money. It's all about how much have they got. And I think that's where the industry falls down. And I think it will change in the future. I think it will change because the younger generation will be more savvy to that, and I think they will do a lot more on their own, so that to become more approachable and much more time. And you do get good financial advisors. You see some of them on LinkedIn that are embracing that change, and I do see financial advisors who are starting to embrace that side of financial well-being and financial coaching, which is great to see, and hopefully that will continue in the future.
I think there's so many negative connotations, aren't there, when it comes to sort of debt and finance. As a British people as a whole, we're not very good at being kind of open about our finances, and I think it does definitely play a part. If people are worried about something, they don't always necessarily know where to go, do they?
No, it's a big taboo. I think money is a big taboo still in the UK. It's not a taboo in America. People will talk openly about what they earn. They'll talk openly about what they've got invested in the stock market. And I think at some point that is going to happen in the UK. And there's going to be people, sitting in a bar and saying how much have you got invested in the stock market in 10, 15 years from now? And some people are going to be feeling really quite inadequate when they think, I don't have anything, because I never felt comfortable to approach anybody to get that help. And it's pivotal that people do feel that they can approach people and talk about this stuff, because it's really, really simple to understand. It's not rocket science, but traditionally there have been barriers to entry. In stockbroking there was a barrier to entry. In financial advice there still is a barrier to entry. You need a certain amount of money, you need a certain amount of income in order to appear sexy, or to appear as something that a financial advisor wants to take interest in, really, which is sad, because everybody, in my opinion, is as important as each other, and I want to help everybody. I don't want to just help people who have a certain amount of money, because by and large the people with a certain amount of money probably have enough already and they're not really interested in your help anyway. They just want to make sure it's ticking along. So your qualifications and all the knowledge you've got is actually useless. I found myself in a lot of financial advice like meetings talking largely about what happened in EastEnders to people who wanted a chat, and I thought this is a total waste of my knowledge. So that's why I thought, I need to get out of this and put my knowledge to good use to helping people who want to get to the next level instead of those who are already at the next level or who've inherited money and really don't care whether it's just ticking along.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's nice to hear. Nice to hear that the sexy side of finance isn't dead. We've actually had a LinkedIn legend question come in.
It's Charlotte Carter. I am the Sales and Marketing Director at Rebellion Marketing, and I'm also the founder of Carter Bags. So a little bit about Rebellion. We help businesses scale with performance-led marketing. And at Carter Bags, I manufacture and sell sustainable laptop bags, or as sustainable as possible right now, for women via my e-commerce site, carterbags.com. In 2019, I actually found myself in quite extreme financial difficulty. I did end up taking a slightly unconventional route to clear my debt. However, I do remember reaching out to a debt charity at the time, which advised me that I should go bankrupt. So my question for you today is personal finance related. If someone isn't earning enough to cover their outgoings and is accruing debt on a monthly basis because their outgoings are higher than their income, what are the most common issues that they face and what should be their first steps in overcoming them? And I hope that this really helps whoever's listening to the answer, because it's a really uncomfortable and a really difficult place to be in.
Great question there from Charlotte Carter. I think for a lot of people, debt management is something that they do struggle with. I certainly know from a business finance perspective, there are definitely ways that if you are in debt and you're struggling to cope with repayments, that actually sometimes refinancing can be a good option. Is just checking what your options are to see if you can get those interest rates at a lower level, and I'm sure it's the same on a personal finance level, but certainly the way that we do it is that we would do like a business review, check what products you've already got, see if we can consolidate those and get you on a lower interest rate, or perhaps stretch out those loan terms so that you can repay it over a longer period, but the repayment is actually a smaller amount that's a little bit more manageable for you as a business. But again, I can only talk about business finance.
I think from a personal standpoint, if you are at the point where things have got really, really bad and it's genuinely affecting things, charities like the Money Advice Service, places like that, you need to be speaking to professionals that deal with this day in, day out that can help you. And sadly, the best thing to do when you've got yourself into bother is speak to people. And it is the last thing you want to do when you've got yourself into debt. But the best thing to do is call the companies that you owe money and speak to them. Tell them about what's going on, come up with payment plans. Communicating, as with everything, is always the answer. It's the same with HMRC. We deal with it all the time. If you ignore HMRC, they're way nastier than if you deal with them and help them. So communication is key around these things. Speak to people that you owe money. Most places will be happy to even let you pay off a £5 a week or £5 a month even, just so long as they can see that you're making payments. It's when you go silent, it's when you go missing, that they start getting nasty, that they start getting threatening. I don't know the laws around it, but I'm fairly sure there are rules that if you are showing willing and you are paying, they sort of have to accept that. So number one is communication. I know that's so hard when it seems terrifying and overwhelming and you hate it all. But can you find a friend that you can open up and let them know about the state you've got them in? Or again, this is why these charities exist, because they will hold your hands through it. So it's just about finding people. Yeah, communicate is basically it, and that is the least helpful answer, because when you've got yourself into a pickle, you don't want to talk to people about it. You want to pretend it's not happening, but that only makes it worse.
Yeah, I think that is the key. I think having done it myself, having been in debt in my early 20s, and I think naturally you do want to bury your head in the sand and you don't want to talk to people, but like Beth said, talking to the people that you owe money to, talking to friends and family, even writing down your debts and putting them in an order of importance. There also comes a point where you have to take ownership as well. I think there's a lot of times we think to ourselves we don't have any money, but if we're honest with ourselves, we're probably not saying no enough. Especially when you're young, it's easy because you're constantly being asked to go out and you're constantly being asked to go to a restaurant or go on a holiday, and unfortunately the only way out is to say no. You're not saying no for the rest of your life, but you have to say no for a certain amount of time in order to get your finances back in shape. And I think it's really important to realise that you can massively turn your life around regardless of the situation you're in now. Lots of people have done it and lots of people will continue to do it. I think one of the biggest factors for me was when I read Duncan Bannatyne's autobiography, and he explained that he had no bank account, was living on a beach with absolutely no money and no future at the age of 30, and he decided after reading a newspaper article on Alan Sugar, who'd just made £1 million in Amstrad, that he was going to go back to the UK and start to make a real conscious effort to build wealth and to build a future for himself. So I think that gives us all hope, really, that no matter what position you're in just now, there is definitely a way out, and there is definitely a chance for you to live a great financial future, just like Duncan Bannatyne did, by just taking ownership and making sure that that you put all your efforts into your money mindset and start to focus more on your future, and making sure that you put all your efforts into your own financial well-being.
I think it's so interesting when you hear these stories about these millionaires, billionaires that started with nothing and then put so much work into it. So I listened to a talk by Alan Barrett, who's the guy that started the Grenade bar brands, like the chocolate protein bars. That was his baby, and he was saying that at one point, he had 27 quid in the bank account, and he went on to recently sell it to the company that owns Cadbury for, I think it was a multi-million-pound deal, like huge. But he was saying at one point Grenade bars had grown notoriety, but I don't think they'd actually built up good cash yet. So he was sleeping on the warehouse floor because people kept trying to rob the Grenade bars. So he was sleeping on the warehouse floor to try and stop these pallets of Grenade bars being stolen, because obviously every time it did, they just didn't have any money because their stock kept getting stolen, and and obviously then he went on to sell it for an obscene amount of money. So I just find these stories, and I know these celebrity millionaires that make all this money are absolutely the exceptions. But I think it is sometimes nice to have a little bit of like positivity. Let's try and overachieve and reach something near what they've done.
I definitely think this that if you're putting the level in, like you have got work to do. If people are in debt, then there is work to be done. Like you can't gloss over the fact that they're in a hole with it, and sometimes that hole can feel so deep and so tight, and you can feel like you're completely there on your own. So I definitely think like we were talking about before, that communication, if you're sharing your what's going on and opening up, dealing with the problem, like being proactive and not reactive. Like if you know that you've got you're going to have bills to pay, as Martin said, you're going to have to say no to certain things. You can normally, I'm a massive bargain hunter. I like saving money. It's, it's all about, what I'm about really. And there are ways that you can, it might be that you have to cut back on things that I think the biggest, they confuse it with what is not necessarily a luxury, but like a level of choice. You have choices with all the purchases that you make, and there are ways that you can save money. People sort of aren't always prepared to give up. They think, oh well, I'm not gonna, I still want to buy top end brands, for example. Like, well, yeah, you can buy your Heinz tomato ketchup, but your Tesco ketchup, it might not taste as good, or it might taste as good. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but there are ways to save money. You can choose different brands to perhaps purchase. You can cut back on the things that you can cut back on. Like, there are certain things you can't, like, there are non-negotiables, aren't they? If you've got to pay your mortgage, you've got to pay your set level of bills, but there are certain things that you can cut back on. And as you say, like choosing where you go on holiday, or not having a holiday, going without something. My husband always laughs, like he drove when we just got married, and he wanted, I can't remember what it was, he wanted some car or something, and I said, no, you can drive a scooter for it. If you drive it for 6 months, you can then get the car that you want, because we'll have saved enough to do it. And he did, and he always laughs now that he was like, oh my god, there was me, you had me driving on a moped in my 20s to like to and fro from work, everyone laughing at me. I'm like, but you had a work van, you didn't need another car, but if you wanted it, you're gonna have to save up for it and get it and do it that way. And that's what we did. But like, I think not everyone is prepared to make those cuts sometimes.
There we go. I think
the mindset. Sorry, I think the mindset to get out of debt is very similar to the mindset that enables you to build wealth. So if you can get the mindset that helps you get out of debt, you're honestly so far along that journey that it'll be so much easier for you to take what you've already learned, and that time that you've already spent with your money, you will find it a lot easier to then move into the transition to start building money quite easily.
And I think we do just need to clarify that this is obviously advice and opinions for people that aren't in a really, really bad place with their debt. Obviously, if you are at the point where your incomings aren't covering your very, very basic heat, water, food and rent bills, then seek professional advice. This isn't professional advice. This is for the sort of lucky people that do have some disposable income and possibly aren't spending it in the right places.
But for those who do need it, there are obviously there's the debt advice helpline. I think there's a government-backed helpline that is available, and you can, if you get on Google and if you Google actual money action line or government teeth in Google money advice. No, what line is it they're Googling? I don't know. So if you do need help, then you can contact the National Debt Line and they will be able to help you. Thank you for joining us on FFS, Fast Finance Sorted. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. For the first 10 people to leave a 5-star rating and write a LinkedIn post, we'll actually give you a coffee just on us. You just need to make sure that you use the hashtag FFS, Fast Finance Sorted. And we look forward to reading those. And this episode was brought to you by Reward Finance Group.